He handed her the divorce papers on the morning of their 20th anniversary, mere hours before taking the stage to introduce his 24-year-old mistress as the new creative director of the company she had helped him build from a garage. David thought he had stripped her of everything, her dignity, her home, and her legacy. He laughed when she left with nothing but her clothes. But David Brown made one fatal miscalculation. He forgot that while he was the face of the empire, she was the architect. He thought he was burying her, but he was actually planting a seed. This is the story of how Flora Jenkins went from a humiliated ex-wife to the hostile acquirer who signed his termination letter. The invitations for the Brown Logistics annual gala were printed on heavy cream cardstock with gold leaf embossing. They cost $12 apiece to mail. Flora Jenkins, technically still Flora Brown, for another 6 hours, ran her thumb over the raised lettering, celebrating 20 years of innovation. It was a lie. The company had been founded 22 years ago, in a cramped apartment in Seattle, fueled by Flora's inheritance from her grandmother and David's relentless charisma. But David liked round numbers. He liked history to look clean, rewriting the timeline to suit his current narrative, just like he was rewriting their marriage. Are you going to stare at that all morning, or are you going to sign the addendum? Flora looked up. Sitting across from her, in the sun-drenched library of their Greenwich, Connecticut estate, was Arthur Penhaligon, David's attorney. Arthur was a shark in a three-piece suit, a partner at Skadden Arps, who charged more per hour than most of Flora's college friends made in a month. The addendum, Flora said, her voice raspy. She hadn't slept in 3 days. The one that says, I can't talk to the press about Jessica. The one that says you cannot discuss Mr. Brown's private associations with any media outlet, nor can you claim any intellectual property rights regarding the logistics algorithm, Arthur corrected smoothly. In exchange, David is willing to let you keep the lake house in Vermont. It's a generous offer, Flora, considering you have no prenup and the company's assets are complicated. Complicated. That was the word David used to hide money. Flora looked at the signature line. David Brown was already signed in his aggressive, sweeping scrawl. Where is he? Flora asked. David is at the city office, preparing for the gala. Arthur checked his Patek Philippe watch. He expects this signed by noon. If not, the offer for the Vermont house is rescinded, and we go to full litigation. You know you don't have the liquidity for a court battle against Brown Logistics. She didn't. David had slowly, methodically moved their joint assets into holding companies and offshore trusts in the Cayman Islands over the last 5 years. He had claimed it was for tax efficiency. She had trusted him. She had been raising their twins, now away at boarding school in Switzerland, and managing the charitable foundation. She had taken her eye off the ball. Flora picked up the pen. Her hand trembled, just once, before she steeled herself. She signed. Good, Arthur said, snapping the folder shut. I'll see myself out. Oh, and Flora? David suggested. It might be best if you didn't attend tonight. Flora looked him dead in the eye. It's the company's 20th anniversary, Arthur. I founded it too. I'm on the board. I'm going. Arthur gave a pitying smile. As you wish. The ballroom at the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan was a sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Flora arrived late. She wore a dress she had bought years ago, a vintage emerald velvet that David used to say made her look like royalty. Tonight, she wore it like armor. She walked in, head high, expecting the usual waves and greetings. Instead, the room went quiet, not silent, but that distinct, heavy drop in volume that happens when the subject of the gossip walks through the door. She saw heads lean together. She saw eyes dart away. Flora. The voice was overly bright. It was Linda Calloway, the wife of one of David's biggest investors. Linda intercepted her near the champagne tower, her smile tight. I'm so surprised to see you here, Linda whispered, gripping Flora's arm a little too hard. Are you okay? After the announcement? What announcement? Flora asked, her stomach dropping. Before Linda could answer, the lights dimmed. a spotlight hit the main stage. The oversized screen behind the podium flashed the Brown Logistics logo, followed by a photo of David. He looked tan, fit, and rich. He jogged up the stairs to thundering applause. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. David boomed into the microphone. Tonight is about the future. It's about shedding the dead weight of the past and streamlining for the new era. Flora froze. Dead weight. For 20 years, we've been good, David continued. But good is the enemy of great. To reach the next level, I realized I needed a partner who understands the modern world, someone with fresh eyes, someone who isn't afraid to break the rules. He turned to the wings of the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my new Chief Strategy Officer, and as of this afternoon, my fiancée, Jessica Vane. The room gasped. It wasn't a polite gasp, it was a shockwave. Jessica walked out. She was stunning, there was no denying it. 24, a former Instagram model turned brand consultant whom David had met at Art Basel in Miami 6 months ago. She was wearing a custom silver gown that looked like liquid mercury. David wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her. On stage, in front of 600 employees, investors, and Flora realized with horror, the press. Flora felt the blood drain from her face. The addendum she had signed that morning wasn't just about a divorce. It was about this. He had secured her silence before parading his mistress in front of the world. David took the mic again, grinning. And I have one more surprise. Jessica isn't just joining the team, she's rebranding it. Effective immediately, the foundational code, the Flora Protocol, as we used to call it, is being retired. Jessica has spearheaded a migration to a new AI-driven system. We're calling it the Vane Initiative. He was erasing her. He wasn't just leaving her, he was deleting her name from the history of the work she had done, the code she had written while pregnant with their twins, the algorithms she had perfected while he was out schmoozing clients. He was crediting it all to a woman who had likely never written a line of Python in her life. The spotlight swept over the crowd and, cruelly, landed on Flora. David shielded his eyes, looking into the glare. Oh, and Flora? I see you made it. The room turned to look at her. Flora stood alone in her emerald velvet, illuminated like a deer on a highway. Let's give a round of applause to my first wife, David said, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. She was there at the start, but some people are built for the start, and some are built for the finish line. Enjoy the Vermont house, Flora. You've earned a rest. Jessica giggled into the microphone. Laughter. A few people actually laughed. Flora didn't cry. She didn't run. She looked at David, then at Jessica, and finally at the board members, sitting in the front row, men she had cooked dinner for, men she had helped make rich. They looked down at their shoes. She turned around and walked out. The click of her heels on the marble floor was the only sound she heard over the rushing of blood in her ears. As she pushed through the heavy brass doors onto Fifth Avenue, the cold November air hit her face. She pulled her phone out. She had one contact left who might pick up. Hello? A groggy voice answered. Richard, Flora said. Don't sell your shares. Flora? It's midnight. What happened? David just humiliated me. He's putting Jessica Vane in charge of the tech stack. I saw the press release, Richard sighed. Richard was the former CFO, pushed out by David 2 years prior for being too cautious. Flora, it's over. He has the board. He has the majority voting stock. You signed the exit agreement. I signed an agreement regarding the current assets, Flora said, her mind racing, the shock replaced by a cold, mathematical fury. I didn't sign away my knowledge of where the bodies are buried. What are you going to do? He called me dead weight, Flora whispered. I'm going to show him exactly how heavy I can be. 3 months later, Flora was living in a 600 square foot walk-up in Queens. The Vermont house had flooded due to a burst pipe a week after the divorce. Suspiciously, the insurance policy had lapsed 2 days prior, a detail David's office forgot to handle. The repairs would cost more than the equity she held in it. She had sold it for scraps. She was 45 years old. She had a PhD in computational logistics from MIT and she was applying for entry-level data analyst jobs under her maiden name, Jenkins. No one would hire her. "You're overqualified," one recruiter told her. "We're looking for a younger culture fit," another said, glancing at her resume, which conspicuously ended in 2004, the year she stopped working officially to raise the kids. "Aren't you David Brown's ex?" a third asked, before ending the interview awkwardly. David had blacklisted her. It was subtle, but effective. He was a powerful man in the tech world. A word here, a nudge there. "She's unstable. She's bitter. She'll sue you." Flora sat at her small IKEA desk, eating instant ramen. On her laptop screen was the live stream of TechCrunch Disrupt. David and Jessica were on stage. Jessica was wearing oversized glasses, trying to look intellectual, talking about synergy and blockchain logistics. "The Vane initiative is revolutionizing shipping," Jessica chirped. "We've cut redundancy by 14%. Flora narrowed her eyes. "Impossible," she muttered. She knew the architecture of Brown Logistics. She had built the core engine. It was optimized to the decimal. To cut redundancy by 14% meant they weren't just optimizing, they were cutting safety protocols. They were bypassing the load balancing checks she had hard-coded to prevent server crashes during peak times. She reached for a stack of papers in her drawer. When she had left the mansion, she hadn't just taken her clothes. She had taken an old hard drive from the safe in the floorboards, a backup David had forgotten existed. It contained the black ledger. Years ago, Brown Logistics had a crisis. A shipment of lithium-ion batteries had caught fire in a warehouse in Nevada. It was a massive scandal waiting to happen. David had paid off the inspectors and altered the manifest to label the batteries as office supplies. He had forced Flora to encrypt the real manifest so deeply that no auditor could find it. She plugged in the hard drive. The files were there. Proof of fraud, proof of bribery, proof of falsified safety records. Her finger hovered over the send button to the Wall Street Journal. No, she thought, not yet. If she leaked it now, the stock would tank. David would blame a rogue employee. He would pay a fine, the company would survive, and he would still be rich. Jessica would still be famous. And Flora would just be the whistleblower who destroyed her own children's inheritance. She didn't want to destroy the company. She wanted to own it. She needed money. Real money. Not the alimony. Scraps David fought her on every month. Her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. "This is Flora." "Miss Jenkins," a voice rasped. It sounded synthetic, distorted. "I believe you are looking for an opportunity to correct a balance." "Who is this?" Flora sat up straighter. "A friend of the discarded," the voice said. "I represent a private equity firm. We specialize in distressed assets. We've been watching the Vane initiative roll out. We know the numbers are fake." Flora's heart hammered. "How do you know?" "Because we're shorting the stock," the voice said. "But we need proof to drive the nail in the coffin. You have the black ledger." Flora went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play games, Flora. David Brown has enemies. Powerful ones. You aren't the only person he stepped on to get to the penthouse. We want to meet, tonight. The Red Hook, Shipping Yards. Warehouse 4, B." "That sounds like the start of a murder mystery," Flora said dryly. "It's the start of your comeback. Bring the drive. In exchange, we don't offer you money, we offer you capital. Enough to buy back in when the price crashes." Flora hung up. She looked at the screen. David was laughing at some joke Jessica made. She grabbed her coat. The Red Hook warehouse was freezing. The wind whipped off the East River, smelling of salt and diesel. Flora waited in the shadows of a rusted crane. A black Lincoln Navigator pulled up. The back door opened. "Get in," a man said. Flora hesitated, then stepped inside. The interior was warm, smelling of leather and cigar smoke. Sitting there was not a faceless goon, but a man she recognized. It was Elias Thorne, Flora gasped. Elias Thorne was a legend and a ghost. In the 90s, he was the only rival David truly feared. Then, in 2005, Thorne's company was raided by the SEC. He lost everything. Rumor was David had tipped off the feds, planting false evidence to eliminate the competition. Thorne had disappeared into the European underground markets. He looked older now, his face lined, his hair silver, but his eyes were sharp as flint. "Hello, Flora," Elias said, pouring a glass of whiskey. "I see he got you too." "You're the distressed asset investor?" Flora asked. "I am the silent partner in Aurora Holdings," Elias corrected. "We have $2 billion in liquidity waiting for a target. I want Brown Logistics. I want to strip it for parts and leave David with nothing but his debts." "I don't want to strip it," Flora said firmly. "I built that company. The code is mine. The employees, the good ones, are people I hired. I don't want to kill it. I want to take it back." Elias swirled his drink. "A hostile takeover? That's expensive. And David holds 51% of the voting shares." "Not for long," Flora said. "The Vane Initiative is bypassing the safety protocols. I ran a simulation this morning. The system is unstable. The next time they have a peak surge, which is Black Friday, 3 weeks from now the servers will crash. The logistics chain will break. Inventory will be lost. The stock will plummet." Elias raised an eyebrow. And when the stock tanks, margin calls will hit. David leveraged his personal shares to buy that penthouse and fund Jessica's lifestyle brand. If the stock drops below $40, the bank seizes his shares and auctions them off. "And we buy them," Elias finished, a smile creeping onto his face. "We buy them," Flora agreed. "But I need a war chest, and I need a new identity. If David sees Flora Jenkins buying shares, he'll stop the auction. He'll find a way." Elias opened a briefcase. Inside was a thick file. "This is Phoenix LLC," Elias said. "It's a shell company registered in Luxembourg. You are the sole director. No one knows it exists. I will fund it with $50 million as a starting bid. But Flora, if you do this, there is no going back. If we fail, you go to prison for corporate espionage. David will make sure of it." Flora looked at the file. She thought of Jessica wearing her life like a costume. She thought of David calling her dead weight. "One condition," Flora said. "Name it. When we walk into that boardroom to fire him, I want to be the one sitting at the head of the table." Elias clinked his glass against hers. "Deal." The office of Phoenix LLC was nothing like the sprawling glass campus of Brown Logistics. It was a renovated loft in Dumbo, Brooklyn, filled with servers, cooling fans, and the hum of high-frequency trading algorithms. Flora stared at the wall of monitors. It was 3 days before Black Friday. "They're pushing the update tonight," Flora said, her voice tight. "Jessica wants the Vane Initiative live for the holiday rush, to prove the shareholders wrong about the Q3 dip." Elias Thorne stood behind her, watching the data streams. "Are you sure it will fail?" "David isn't stupid. He would have had his team stress test it." "David isn't stupid, but he's arrogant," Flora replied, typing rapidly. "And Jessica fired the QA lead, Mark Henderson, last week because he lacked vision. I know, because Mark called me crying. Without Mark, there's no one left who understands the load-balancing architecture I built in 2018. Flora pulled up a schematic of the Brown Logistics Central Hub in Ohio. It was a massive automated warehouse where thousands of robots sorted packages. "Look at this." Flora pointed to a line of code she had accessed through a back door, a ghost user account she had created years ago for remote debugging. Jessica's new AI maximizes robot speed by removing the collision avoidance buffer. She thinks if the robots move 20% faster, they'll process 20% more packages. "And they won't?" Elias asked. "They will," Flora said grimly, "for about 6 hours. Then the friction in the wheel bearings will exceed thermal limits. The sensors will drift. And when one robot misses a turn by a millimeter, at that speed, catastrophic failure, Elias finished. It won't just be a glitch, Elias. It will be a pileup, a physical crash inside the warehouse." Just then, Flora's phone buzzed. It was a text from a burner number. Subject: "Eyes only." Message: "He's trying to sell the Vermont land rights. He knows someone is buying up the float. He needs cash to fight a takeover. David senses us," Elias noted, reading over her shoulder. He sees Phoenix LLC buying small blocks of shares. He doesn't know it's you, but he knows someone is circling. Let him panic, Flora said. Panic makes him reckless. But the next morning, the game changed. Flora was at a coffee shop in Brooklyn when she saw the news. A headline on CNBC: Brown Logistics announces partnership with Omnicorp. Flora nearly dropped her coffee. Omnicorp was a massive conglomerate, a rival logistics firm. If David merged with them, or even just signed a defensive partnership, the stock price would stabilize. He would have a safety net. He's trying to make himself too big to fail, Flora whispered. She ran back to the loft. Elias was already on the phone, looking furious. He's offering them a 15% discount on shipping in exchange for a cash injection, Elias said, slamming the phone down. If that deal goes through on Monday, our short position kills us. We'll lose the 50 million. The deal is signed on Monday? Flora asked. Yes. At the opening bell. Then we have to kill the company before Monday, Flora said. Her eyes were cold. Black Friday is tomorrow. The crash has to be worse than just lost packages. It has to be a PR nightmare that scares Omnicorp away. How? Flora sat at the terminal. I'm going to unmask the Vane initiative. Jessica claims it's AI. It's not. I'm going to show the world what it really is. She began to type. She wasn't hacking the system to break it. She was hacking the reporting tool. She set up a script that would auto-tweet every single error message the server generated directly to the official Brown Logistics Twitter account, tagging the major shareholders and tech journalists. When the system fails, Flora said, the world will see the raw logs. They'll see the negligence. That's bold, Elias smiled, but dangerous. If they trace the script to this IP, they won't, Flora said, because I'm routing it through the smart fridge in the executive break room at Brown HQ. I bought that fridge in 2021. It still has my admin password. Black Friday, 4 a.m. The Brown Logistics Command Center in Manhattan was buzzing. David Brown stood overlooking the floor, a scotch in hand. He looked tired. The Omnicorp deal was his lifeline, but the stress was eating him alive. Traffic is at 110% capacity, Jessica announced from the main console. She looked manic, her eyes wide. The Vane initiative is holding. Throughput is up 18%. Good, David muttered. Keep it there. If we survive today, we survive forever. In Brooklyn, Flora and Elias watched the same data, but they were looking at the thermal sensors in the Ohio warehouse. Temperature on conveyor belt 4 is rising, Flora noted. Bearings are at 200 degrees. Why isn't the system throttling down? Elias asked. Because Jessica hard-coded the override, Flora said. She turned off the safety alarms to stop them from annoying her during the demo. On the screen, the temperature graph spiked red. 4:15 a.m. In Ohio, a sorting robot, designated Unit 734, seized up. Its wheel shattered from the heat. It skidded sideways on the track. Because the collision buffer was removed, the robot behind it, Unit 735, didn't slow down. It slammed into 734 at full speed. Crunch. The impact derailed both units. They spilled heavy packages onto the tracks. Collision detected in Sector 4, a technician shouted in the Brown Command Center. Override it, Jessica snapped. Reroute traffic to Sector 5. We can't, the technician yelled. The logic loop is stuck. The system thinks Sector 4 is clear because you disabled the sensor feedback. 4:00 a.m. 10 more robots plowed into the wreckage. It was a chain reaction, a pileup of metal and cardboard. A lithium-ion battery in one of the packages was punctured. Sparks flew. Then, fire. Fire alarm, the technician screamed. Sprinklers activating in Ohio. David dropped his glass. Shut it down. Shut down the line. I can't. Jessica was frantically tapping her tablet. The interface is frozen. It's locked me out. At that exact moment, Flora's script executed. The official Brown Logistics Twitter account began posting. At Brown Logistics, Era 505, thermal critical. Collision avoidance, disabled by user, Javane. At Brown Logistics, fatal exception. Fire suppression active. Inventory loss, 100%. At Brown Logistics, system note. Just turn off the alarm so it runs faster. CMD, override, auth, JVane. Flora had programmed the script to publish Jessica's internal admin notes alongside the crash logs. The internet exploded. In minutes, Number Brown crash was trending Haishone globally. Screenshots of Jessica's reckless commands were everywhere. 6 a.m. The markets hadn't even opened yet, and the pre-market trading for Brown Logistics was a bloodbath. The stock, which had closed at $145 on Wednesday, was trading at $82 in the dark pools. David was pacing the office, screaming into his phone. "It's a glitch, a hack. Tell the press it was North Korea." "Mr. Brown," his secretary interrupted, her face pale. "Omnicorp is on line 1, the CEO. He says the deal is off." David froze. "Put him through." He hung up, sir, after he read the tweets. David turned to Jessica. She was sitting in the corner, sobbing, holding her phone. "You said you fixed the code," David whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "You said you modernized it." "I did," Jessica wailed. "It was working. Someone sabotaged me." "You sabotaged us," David roared, throwing a stapler at the wall. "You turned off the safety sensors? Are you insane?" 9:30 a.m. Market open. The opening bell rang. Brown Logistics opened at $65. Flora and Elias were watching the ticker. "Now," Flora said. "Executing," Elias replied. Phoenix LLC began buying. Not slowly, aggressively. Every time a panic seller dumped stock, Phoenix bought it. As the price crashed to $50, then $45, the volume was unprecedented. David's phone rang. It was the bank. "Mr. Brown," the banker said, his voice cold, "your personal shares are leveraged against the $40 mark. The stock is currently at $42. We need you to post collateral immediately, or we initiate a margin call." "I have the Vermont house," David shouted. "The Vermont house is flooded and worthless, sir. We checked. I have the yacht. The yacht is in the Cayman Islands and currently impounded for unpaid docking fees. You have 1 hour, Mr. Brown, to find $40 million. David hung up. He looked at the window. He was watching his empire burn. "Who is buying?" David asked his CFO. "Someone is buying the dip? Who is it?" "A shell company," the CFO said, typing furiously. "Phoenix LLC, registered in Luxembourg, no names attached." "Find them," David hissed. "Find out who they are and offer them a board seat if they stop." 11 a.m. The stock hit $39.50. The margin call triggered. The bank automatically seized David's 51% stake in the company and put it on the block for immediate liquidation to cover his debts. "There it is," Elias said softly. "The crown jewels are on the table. Buy them," Flora said. "All of them." Elias hit the key. $50 million of capital flooded into the market, snapping up David's seized shares. In 30 seconds, ownership of Brown Logistics transferred from David Brown to Phoenix LLC. David's phone didn't ring this time. His email pinged. A notification from the SEC. Change of control event. Brown Logistics. New majority shareholder. Phoenix LLC. David slumped into his chair. He had lost. He didn't know who Phoenix was, but he knew he was now an employee in his own company. The office door opened. David looked up, expecting the police, or the bank, or maybe Jessica coming to apologize. But it wasn't them. Walking into the chaos of the command center, wearing a sharp white suit that looked like a weapon, was Flora. The room went silent. The technicians, who had been scrambling to put out the digital fires, stopped. They remembered her. Some of them smiled. "Flora?" David stood up, confused. "What are you doing here?" "Security." "Security works for the board," Flora said, her voice calm, echoing through the silent room. "And as of 2 minutes ago, I control the board." David's face went white. "You? You're Phoenix?" "I'm the Phoenix," Flora corrected, stepping closer. "And you, David, are the ashes." She tossed a folder onto the desk. "That's the Black Ledger," she said. "The proof of the battery fraud in Nevada. the bribes you paid to the Port Authority, and the logs showing Jessica's negligence today. Jessica gasped. You can't prove that. I just tweeted it to the world, Jessica, Flora said, not even looking at her. She kept her eyes locked on David. So here is how this goes, Flora said. You can be escorted out by security, and I hand this folder to the FBI. You'll go to prison for 10 years. Or what? David choked out. Or you resign. Effective immediately. You sign over your remaining assets to the employee pension fund you drained, and you leave with nothing, just like I did. David looked at the folder. He looked at his company. He looked at his mistress, who was currently deleting her Instagram account in a panic. He realized, for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't the smartest person in the room. Where do I sign? David whispered. The boardroom of Brown Logistics had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, a view that usually cost a CEO their soul. David sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, alone. His tie was undone. His hands were shaking. The door opened. Flora walked in, followed not by lawyers or security, but by three people David hadn't seen in years. There was Marcus Chen, the former chief operations officer, David fired for refusing to cut safety budgets. There was Elena Rodriguez, the brilliant data architect who quit when Jessica took over. And there was Elias Thorne, looking like a wolf who had just finished a very satisfying meal. This is a hostile takeover, David spat, trying to summon his old bluster. The SEC will investigate. The SEC is already investigating, David, Flora said, placing a thick binder on the table. They're investigating the Nevada incident. You know, the battery fire you covered up? The one that almost killed 3 workers? David went pale. You can't prove that. The manifest was encrypted. Who do you think wrote the encryption? Flora asked softly. I didn't just write the code to hide it, David. I wrote the key to unlock it, and I just sent it to the district attorney. David looked at Elias. You're backing her? You're a vulture, Thorne. I'm an investor, Elias corrected, taking a seat and putting his feet up on the table. And right now, the only asset worth saving in this building is the woman standing in front of you. Everyone else is a liability, especially you. Flora leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. Here is the deal, she said. You resign. Today, citing health reasons. You forfeit your golden parachute, all 20 million of it, to the employee pension fund you raided last year to buy Jessica's penthouse. In exchange, I don't give the DA the full unredacted file, just enough to get you a hefty fine and a ban from running public companies. No prison time. You walk away. And if I refuse? David sneered. I built this company. The board is loyal to me. Flora picked up a remote and clicked a button. The wall screen flickered to life. It showed the live feed of the main lobby. It was chaos. Reporters were swarming the entrance. Employees were walking out with boxes. But in the center of the crowd, a chant was starting. Bring back Flora. Bring back Flora. The board just held an emergency vote, Flora said. They saw the tweets. They saw the crash. They saw the stock price drop 60% in 4 hours. They voted unanimously to accept your resignation. You don't have a choice, David. You're already fired. David looked at the screen. He saw the faces of people he had worked with for 2 decades. They weren't angry. They looked relieved that he was gone. He slumped back in his chair. The fight went out of him. And Jessica? He whispered. Jessica is currently giving an interview to TMZ, blaming you for forcing her to disable the safeties, Elena said, checking her phone. She's throwing you under the bus to save her brand deals. David laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. Of course she is. He reached for a pen. He signed the resignation letter. He signed the asset forfeiture. Get out, Flora said. David stood up. He looked smaller than he ever had. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back at Flora. You realize, he said, that the company is dead? The stock is junk? The clients are leaving? You just bought a sinking ship. I know how to swim, Flora said. David left. Flora turned to the room. The silence was heavy. Okay, she said, taking a breath. We own it. Now, we have to fix it. The stock is at $35. We have 48 hours before the markets open on Monday to prove we aren't dead. The warehouse in Ohio is still on fire, Marcus pointed out. Put it out, Flora ordered. Elena, I need you to roll back the entire system to the Flora Protocol, version 4.2. Restore the safety buffers. I don't care if it's slower. It works. It will take all weekend, Elena said. I need coffee. A lot of it. Get it, Flora said. Elias, get on the phone with Omnicorp. Tell them the deal is back on, but on our terms. We don't need their money, we need their volume. Tell them the new CEO is the original architect. And what are you going to do? Elias asked. Flora walked to the window. She looked down at the city. I'm going to talk to the employees, she said. David hid in this tower. I'm going down to the lobby. The lobby of Brown Logistics was a war zone of microphones and shouting reporters. When the elevator doors opened and Flora stepped out, the noise intensified. Mrs. Brown, is it true the company is bankrupt? Did your husband flee the country? Flora walked to the podium that had been set up for crisis management. She didn't have a speech prepared. She didn't have a PR team. She wore her white suit, now slightly wrinkled, and her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She tapped the microphone. Thump, thump. My name is Flora Jenkins, she said. Her voice was steady. I am not Mrs. Brown. I am the new CEO of this company. The crowd quieted slightly. For 20 years, Flora continued, this company was built on a promise that we deliver. We deliver packages, we deliver data, and we deliver trust. Today, that trust was broken, not by a computer glitch, but by human arrogance. She looked directly into the camera lens. To our customers, your packages are late. I know. We are refunding every single shipment from the last 24 hours. It will cost us millions. We will pay it. A murmur went through the crowd. CEOs didn't usually admit fault this openly. To our employees, she said, turning to look at the workers gathered on the mezzanine, I know you were told to cut corners. I know you were told to ignore safety. That ends today. The Vane initiative is dead. We are returning to the core protocols. Safety first, speed second. If you see something wrong, you stop the line. You will not be fired. You will be thanked. A few employees started to clap, then more. Then it became a roar. And to the market, Flora said, her eyes hardening, you think Brown Logistics is a sell? Go ahead. Bet against us. But know this. The person running this company now is the person who built the engine in the first place. I know where every screw is. I know every line of code. We aren't going anywhere. She stepped back. The video of her speech went viral instantly. Number Flora returns replaced number Brown crash as the top trend. Up in the boardroom, Elias watched the stock ticker on his phone. In after-hours trading, the stock had stopped falling. It ticked up, $36, $37. She's good, Elias muttered. But the real test was yet to come. That night, Flora was in the server room, sleeves rolled up, working alongside Elena. They were manually patching the corrupted database. It's worse than I thought, Elena said, pointing to a block of code. Jessica didn't just disable the safeties, she deleted the backups for the client list. We have thousands of orders with no addresses. She what? Flora stared at the screen. That's malice. That's not incompetence. Look at the timestamp, Elena said. She deleted them after the crash started. At 4:30 a.m., Flora felt a chill. She was trying to hide the evidence of who got hurt. If there are no addresses, we can't prove which packages were destroyed. We can recover it, Flora said. But we need the physical hard drives from the Ohio server farm. The ones in the fire. They'll be melted, Elena said. Not the black box, Flora said. I installed a military-grade flight recorder in the main server rack in 2019. David called me paranoid. He said, it was a waste of money. You think it survived? It's rated for 2,000 degrees, Flora said. Get me a helicopter. I'm going to Ohio. The helicopter ride was turbulent. Flora looked down at the dark landscape of Pennsylvania passing below. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. When they landed in the parking lot of the Ohio Distribution Center, the smell of smoke was overpowering. Firefighters were still hosing down the west wing of the building. The site manager, a burly man named Frank, who Flora had hired 10 years ago, ran up to the chopper. "Flora!" Frank yelled over the rotor noise. "You shouldn't be here. It's unstable." "I need the server room, Frank," Flora shouted back. "The black box." "The roof caved in over the server room," Frank said. "It's a pile of slag." "Show me." They ran into the building. The air was thick with acrid smoke. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows. The server room was a wreck. Twisted metal beams lay across the racks. Water from the sprinklers pooled on the floor, mixing with ash. "There," Flora pointed. Under a fallen I-beam, the orange casing of the black box recorder was visible. It was scorched, but intact. "We can't move that beam," Frank said. "We need a crane." "We don't have time for a crane," Flora said. She grabbed a crowbar from a nearby tool station. "Frank, get on the other side. We just need to lift it 2 inches." "Flora, you're the CEO," Frank said. "You're in a white suit." "I'm an engineer, Frank." "Lift." They strained against the metal. Flora felt her muscles screaming. The heat was intense. Her suit was ruined, covered in soot and grease. 1, 2, heave. The beam groaned. It lifted an inch. "Elena, grab it!" Flora screamed into her headset. "Someone grab it!" A young firefighter, seeing what was happening, dove into the gap and pulled the orange box free. Flora and Frank dropped the beam. It crashed down with a deafening clang. Flora fell to her knees, coughing. The firefighter handed her the box. It was hot to the touch. She plugged a portable diagnostic tool into the port. A green light blinked. Data integrity, 98%. Flora closed her eyes and let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 6 months. "We have the addresses," she whispered. "We can save the orders." She looked up at Frank. His face was streaked with soot. "Get this to New York," she said. "Tell Elena to upload it." "And Frank?" "Yeah, boss? Double time for everyone on this shift. And tell them. Tell them we're going to rebuild this place. Better." Frank grinned. "Copy that, boss." As Flora walked back to the helicopter, her phone rang. It was David. "I saw the news," David said. His voice was slurred. He was drunk. "You went into the fire? You're crazy." "I'm committed, David," Flora said. "There's a difference." "Jessica left me," David mumbled. "She took the dog. Can you believe she took the dog?" "I don't care, David," Flora said. "Don't call this number again." She hung up and threw the phone into the wet ash of the parking lot. She climbed into the chopper. "Back to New York," she told the pilot. "We have a company to run." 6 months after the Black Friday crash, the snow in New York had melted, revealing the grime and the gold of the city beneath. Brown Logistics was gone. In its place stood Phoenix Global. The rebranding wasn't just cosmetic. Flora had gutted the company. The executive washroom on the 40th floor was now a server farm. The private chef David had kept on payroll was gone, replaced by a 2-4-hour cafeteria for the night shift engineers. The stock, which had bottomed out at $35, closed on Tuesday at $182. Flora sat in her office, not the corner office with the view, but a glass-walled cube in the center of the trading floor. She liked the noise. She liked seeing the work happen. "Quarterly report just came in," Elias said, dropping a file on her desk. He was wearing jeans now, having ditched the suits. "We're up 14% year over year. The new safety protocols actually improve delivery times because we have 0 downtime for accidents." David always said safety was a cost center, Flora mused, opening the file. "Turns out, chaos is more expensive." "Speaking of costs," Elias said, his voice lowering. "He's in the lobby." Flora stopped. She hadn't spoken to David since the night of the fire. "Does he have an appointment?" "No." Security tried to turn him away. "He says he has something for you." Flora considered it. She looked at the busy floor, the monitors flashing green, the young engineers debating code in the break room. She felt an immense sense of peace. "Let him up," she said. "But just him. No lawyers. David Brown looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 6 months. His tan was gone. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, as if he had lost weight too quickly. He carried a small cardboard box. He walked through the bullpen. No one looked up. The new employees didn't know who he was. To them, he was just another visitor in a suit. Flora met him at the door of her glass cube. She didn't invite him to sit. "Hello, David." "Flora," he said. He looked around the office, his eyes landing on the logo, a stylized bird, rising from ash. Phoenix. Subtle. "It seemed appropriate," she said. "What do you want?" David set the box on her desk. "I found these. In the storage unit. I thought, I thought you might want them." Flora opened the box. Inside were old photos. Polaroids from their first apartment in Seattle. A picture of them eating pizza on the floor, surrounded by shipping manifests. A photo of Flora holding their newborn twins, looking exhausted but happy. "I don't have anywhere to put them," David said quietly. "I'm moving to a smaller place." In Jersey City, Flora looked at the photos. They felt like artifacts from a different civilization. "Jessica?" Flora asked, not out of malice, but curiosity. David let out a short, bitter laugh. "She's in Dubai, influencing for some cryptocurrency startup. She blocked my number the day the final settlement check cleared." He looked at Flora, really looked at her. "You did it," he said. "You actually saved it. I thought you would sell it for parts." "I didn't save your company, David," Flora said, closing the box. "I built a new one. Yours was built on hype and leverage. This one is built on code and concrete." David nodded. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "I was wondering," he started, his voice cracking slightly, "if, maybe, there was a consulting role. I know the suppliers. I know the old contracts. I could help with the transition." The silence stretched. It was the longest 10 seconds of David's life. Flora looked at the man she had loved for 20 years, the man who had humiliated her on a stage in front of the world, the man who had called her dead weight. She felt no anger. She felt no satisfaction. She just felt nothing. He was a stranger. "No, David," she said softly. "Flora, please. I need the work. The legal fees took everything." "We don't hire people who ignore safety protocols," she said, quoting the new employee handbook. "It's a liability." She pushed the box of photos back toward him. "Keep them," she said. "They belong to the past. I don't live there anymore." David stared at her, waiting for the cruelty, the gloating, but there was none, just a professional dismissal. He picked up the box. He turned and walked out. Flora watched him go. She watched him press the button for the elevator, step inside, and vanish as the doors slid shut. "You okay?" Elias asked, appearing at her side with 2 coffees. "I'm fine," Flora said, taking a cup. "Actually, I'm better than fine." She turned back to her screens. "Let's get back to work. I have an idea for the drone delivery algorithm." "You never stop, do you?" Elias grinned. "Why stop?" Flora smiled, typing a command that sent a fleet of trucks rolling out of a warehouse in Ohio. "I'm just getting started." And that is the story of how Flora Jenkins didn't just get revenge. She got everything. She proved that dignity is quiet, competence is loud, and the best way to destroy your enemies is to outlast them. David Brown lost his empire because he forgot the golden rule of business. Never underestimate the person who built the foundation you're standing on. If you enjoyed the story of justice, betrayal, and corporate warfare, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post new drama storytelling videos every week. What would you have done in Flora's shoes? Would you have given David a job? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey, Invisible Man! Thank you so much for the super chat. Paola? Hello, Santos. How you doing? No problem, Helen. You have a good one. Appreciate you being here.